Hello, students. Today we are going to understand a poem, A Legend of the Northland. This poem is written by Phoebe Carey. She was an American poetess. She occasionally attended school. She often had to work at home and hence was largely self educated. And she died of hepatitis. So, let's start with this poem. Actually, this poem is written in a ballad form. Ballad means a song which narrates a story in short stanzas. They are a part of folk culture or popular culture and are passed on orally from one generation to the next. So, this poem is written in the form of a ballad, जिसमें गाने के माध्यम से कोई भी स्टोरी डिपिक्ट की जाती है. That is known as ballad. This poem gives the idea that we should not be selfish and always help the needy. A selfish person has no satisfaction in life. Legend. Legend means a story which is taken from the ancient times and which talks about the people and events, and such type of stories give some moral. We get a lot of moral teachings from these legends. They help us to learn things from the past, and those ideas help to reform the society. Okay. Northland is an area which is very cold and which is usually covered with the snow. So, this is a story which is done in the form of a ballad taken from the ancient times, and it is of the north part, which is usually covered with the snow. Away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through. Away in the Northland means very far away in the Northland. The writer poet is talking about the northern area. Here, the poet is introducing the place from which her story is derived. She says that here days are short. Days are few means days are very short, and the nights are so long in winter, and the nights are very long. It is so cold that people cannot sleep comfortably at night. They often wake up because they are unable to bear the temperature. So the people usually keeps on waking up throughout the night. They are unable to sleep. Where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows, and the children look like bears' cubs in their funny furry clothes. Where they harness. Harness means to strap and fasten. Jotna, जिसको जोतना कहते हैं. Where they harness the swift reindeer. She is describing here the people of the Northland. What they are doing? They like to go for sledging, and they tie reindeer up to their sledges. Sledge, sledge is a cart which is used on ice when it snows, and the children look like bears' cubs. Cubs means young one of lion. In their funny furry clothes. Funny, amusing. Furry, the clothes which are made up of fur, means the children are covered with the fur. Now, in this stanza, the poet is describing the people of the Northland. She is saying that when the snow falls, they like to go for the sledging, and they tie reindeer up to their sledges. Because of the cold, children wear heavy woolen clothes which cover them up completely, and they look like the cubs of bears. Cubs of bears means young one of lion. छोटे बच्चे शेर के या भालू के छोटे बच्चे furry clothes, fur से कपड़े बने हुए पहन लेते हैं. So they look like a young ones of the lion. They tell them a curious story. I don't believe it's true, and yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. They tell them a curious story. Curious means a strange story. And the poet is talking about how the parents in the Northland, they stands for parents. How the parents in the Northland, they are telling the story, strange story to their young ones. But the poet is saying that the story may not be true. It should be told, but it should be told to teach children an important lesson. Okay, if I tell you the tale means story, means यहाँ poet कहना चाह रहा है कि मैं एक ये पेरेंट्स नॉर्थलैंड के अपने बच्चों को एक स्ट्रेंज स्टोरी सुनाते हैं. भले ही वो सही नहीं है, लेकिन they want to teach their children some moral. That's why they are telling them a strange story. Once, when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below and walked about it, preaching just as he did, Once, when the good Saint Peter, saint, a person of exceptional holiness, sadhu sannyasi, one saint whose name was Peter. So, he lived in the world below. World below means आजकल की दुनिया में. Okay? And walked about it preaching. Preaching means giving religious speech, उपदेश देना, just as he did, So this story is about the Saint Peter who traveled around the world preaching the teaching of Jesus Christ. Here the Saint Peter used to give the teachings of the Jesus Christ. He came to the door of a cottage in traveling round the earth where a little woman was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. He came to the door of a cottage. Cottage, a small house. In traveling round the earth. Means when he was traveling around the earth, he came at the door of the small house. In that house, a little woman was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. Hearth, fireplace, bhatti, jisko kehte hain. So what she was doing? She was making cake she was baking those cakes on the hearth. And being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done, he asked her from her store of cakes to give him a single one. So, as that Saint Peter was on fasting, means he did not had anything since the morning, so he became weak. He faint means chakkar aana. He became weak with fasting. For the day was almost done. Almost means the day was almost gone, nearly about to go. He asked her from her store of cakes to give him a single one. So, what he asked the lady? He asked the lady to give him some cake from her store, at least a single of piece, so that he can fill his stomach. As he was fainting, he had become weak, as he had not taken anything since the morning, and the day was nearly to get over. He was feeling very weak, so he asked her to give him a piece of cake, single piece of cake. So she made a very little cake, but as it baking lay, she looked at it and thought it seemed too large to give away. Okay, so the poet tells that the woman made a very small cake, but before she could give it to the Saint Peter, she thought that it was too big to just be given away like that. So what happened? She made a very thin cake. Baking lay means when she made a very little thin cake, she looked at it and thought it seemed means appeared too large to give away. Give away means to give for free. तो उसको क्या लगा, जैसे जब वो केक बना रही थी उसको लगा कि ये जो केक वो बना रही है किसी को फ्री में देने के लिए बहुत बड़ा है. Therefore she needed another and still a smaller one. But it looked, when she turned it over, as large as the first had done. So what happened? She needed another. Needed means atta gundna. So what she did? She made another dough, atta gunda, and she made a little smaller one. That part of the cake, she took a little smaller than the previous one, but it looked, when she turned it over, as large as the first had done. So when the woman made another dough, she thought that this cake was still bigger than the previous cake. Then she took a tiny scrap of dough and rolled it flat and baked it thin as a wafer, but she couldn't part with that. Took a tiny scrap. Scrap means small piece of dough. Dough, you know, flour mixed with water, atta gutha hua, and baked it thin as a wafer. Wafer, you all know, very thin dry biscuit, है ना? But she couldn't part with. Part with means give away. So now here what the poet says, that the woman made third attempt to make a cake so small that she wouldn't mind giving it away. This time she took an extremely small lump of dough. When she rolled out the dough, her cake was as flat and thin as a wafer. However, she couldn't even give that cake away. For she said, my cakes that seem too small when I eat of them myself are yet too large to give away. So she put them on the shelf. Now see the selfishness of this lady. What she said, that the cakes that seemed so small when she herself ate them were all too big to be given away. So as a result, she kept all the cakes on the shelf and did not give any to Saint Peter. What she said, that कि जब कोई केक वो किसी दूसरे को देती है तो वो बहुत बड़ा लगता है, भले ही अगर वो उस केक को खुद खाती है तो वो केक उसको छोटा लगता है. So what she did, she put that cake on the shelf. Then good Saint Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint, and surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. Enough means sufficient. Provoke means to make angry. So now in this stanza, the poet says that the Saint Peter's reaction to the woman was unbearable. He lost his temper because he was hungry and weak, and he needed something to eat because he was very hungry and he wants some food very badly. So here the behavior of the greedy woman irritated Saint Peter, and he said, you are far too selfish to dwell in a human form, to have both food and shelter and fire to keep you warm. Dwell means to live. In a human form means as a human. So now the Saint Peter became very angry. So he cursed on the selfish woman. Cursed means usko bura bala kaha, usko shrap diya, telling her that she did not deserve to have such comforts of the human life. She could not have a warm fire, a house to live in, and good food to eat whenever she wanted. So, in this stanza, the poet that Saint Peter became angry and he cursed that lady. Now you shall build as the birds do, and shall get your scanty food by boring and boring and boring all day in the hard dry wood. Scanty, too small in size. Boring, boring means making holes. Okay? All day in the hard dry wood. Hard dry wood means solid. So the poet tells us that Saint Peter told the woman that she would have to build her own nest like birds do, and she must dig holes into wood so that she could get worms to feed herself. Yeah. Okay. So what that saint said, that in order to have too small means in a little amount food, what she will have to do, she will have to make holes in the hard solid wood. Then up she went through the chimney, never speaking a word, and out of the top flew a woodpecker, for she was changed to a bird. Chimney, you all know? Chimney is a pipe through which smoke is carried out. It is usually used in the factories or in the village. So what happened? The woman went up the chimney of her house, and now she was speechless, means she was not even able to speak a single word. She had turned into a woodpecker. Woodpecker, katforwa. The same woodpecker could be seen flying out of the top of the chimney, and in the form of a woodpecker, she fly out from the chimney. She had a scarlet cap on her head, and that was left the same, but all the rest of her clothes were burnt black as a coal in the flame. Scarlet means bright red, dark red. So what happened? That woman was wearing a red cap. The cap which she was wearing when she was a human being. So that cap remained the same, but all the other rest of her clothes, they were burnt, so they became black. Flame means fire. The woodpecker's head has still the same shade of red in color. Okay. However, her clothes were burnt and had become black as a coal. The woodpecker's body is of the same color. And every country schoolboy has seen her in the wood where she lives in the trees till this very day, boring and boring for food. Every country. Here in this poem, here country means a village. So every living in the village has seen this woodpecker. She still digs into the bark of trees and looks for worms to feed on. Okay, so this poem tells us that our true satisfaction lies in sharing things with others. Peace and satisfactions are the two sides of a coin. If there is satisfaction in our life, peace is bound to come in our life. However, greed spoils both. If we are greedy, we cannot get satisfaction as well as peace in our life. So in this poem, the old lady was greedy and she failed to give cake to the saint. If she had satisfaction, she would certainly have shown honor and regard to the saint. So in the case of this little lady, it can be said that her greed had spoiled her peace and satisfaction. So this was all about the poem. Now let's see the poetic devices which I used here. The poetic devices which I used here, first one is alliteration. Alliteration, you all know that the repetition of initial consonants. Example, only one example I have given here. Funny furry clothes. There are many. Second one is repetition. Repetition means any word or sentence is repeated to lay emphasis on it. Like in example, in stanza 1, away. Away word is repeated, and like boring and boring in order to lay the stress. Emphasis means stress. Simile, you all know, where when we compare two distinct words by using word like as or like. Example, baked it thin as a wafer means उसने केक को वेफर से कंपेयर किया है. केक को उसने कितना पतला बनाया, like a wafer. Enjambment. Enjambment means running lines of poetry from one to the next without using any kind of punctuation to indicate a stop. Like in stanza 1, line 3 and 4 means जब कोई 2 या 3 लाइन इस तरह से continuously use करी जाती है बिना कहीं भी कोई punctuation like full stop or comma, anything. So these were the poetic devices which were used here. Now see the rhyming scheme. The rhyming scheme in this poem is A, B, C, B. And be sure that A, B, C, these alphabets should not be written in a capital letter. They are always written in a small letter. Now, how do we find the rhyming schemes? For finding the rhyming schemes, you have to see the last word of each and every stanza. First, we will see the first stanza. Like Northland, see the pronunciation, Northland, few, winter, through. So, the Northland, we will give the name A. Few is not same as the Northland. So, we are giving it a name B. Winter is also not same as the other two. So, let's give the name C. Through, few and through. See, the pronunciation means इनका ending same pronunciation हो रहा है. So, few through. So, we will give this through a B. So, the Northland, few, winter, through. The pronunciation are different. Only few and through. So, these two are given the same alphabet. So, the rhyming scheme is A, B, C, B. See, let's see another. See, each and every stanza has a different. We have to start with the different alphabets, not with the different alphabets. We will start with the same alphabets. But here, see, reindeer, snows, curbs, clothes. See, reindeer, let's give it name A. Snows, it sounds different. B. Curbs, it also sounds different from the above two. So C. Clothes sound same as that of snows. So it will be B. So in this also A, B, C, B. See, so the rhyming scheme of this poem is A, B, C, B. Okay? So this was all about this poem. Thank you.